The music stops, so I guess that's when we stop too. I love that everyone's still chatting and getting to know each other. This is such a part of who we are at Inspire. We're like, and then further and further and further on, right? Nothing starts on time. Take 3 is meant to be 3 minutes. So that segment of worship was what we call Take 3. It's meant to be 3 minutes. We were all in such great conversations that we were like, woo, woo. Nobody noticed. The songs just kept playing. They were fixing some tech issues. But anyways, good morning and welcome. My name is Corey. For those of you who don't know me, I am actually one of the youth pastors here. And my husband, Rob, who's sitting there at the desk, hi, Rob, is also another youth pastor. And that crying baby is our baby. Bye, baby. You're wonderful. Thanks, Deborah. You're the best. And, so I'm here today. Our senior pastors are traveling. They're in Japan. Does anybody follow them on Facebook? Are you like traveling to Japan in your mind with them? You're like, oh my gosh, it's so wonderful. And it really is. I can't stop smiling every time I see their photos because I'm like, I feel like I'm on a bullet train. I feel like you just like live vicariously through people. It's so fun. But anyways, Pastor Haiti and Pastor Hamish are traveling at the moment. So it's our summer season. Like Argus was saying earlier, a lot of people tend to travel around this time. So you might even be traveling through Singapore, or you might be new to Singapore, or you've been coming for ages. And you're like, I'm not traveling. Thanks for reminding me every week. But this is a chance for us to get closer together, right? And so over the last few weeks, we've been talking about worship. And Pastor Hamish teed it off with talking about how worship is a segment, right? Like we just said, that the segment of our worship that we just had was take 3 minutes to get to know each other, or 10 minutes in our case. But it was a part of our worship. And it was a part that we got to connect and get closer in relationship. And this time of worship, we're talking about a life that sings worship. And it's kind of difficult to talk about because thank you, you're the best. Like if you want me to not be on tangents the whole time, this is probably better. You're wonderful. Thank you, Tomas, everyone. Thank you, you're wonderful. It's difficult to talk about worship because worship is both a segment of service, traditionally a segment of service where we sing some songs and we make ourselves available to God and really try and connect with God through song, right? And sometimes we consider that as worship. But it's really hard to separate that as worship from our life and our lifestyle because even when we come and we sing, that's just an extension of what our normal lifestyle is. So, sometimes if we're having a rough week, when we come to worship, it's really hard to be like, yeah, God, you're so good. Or sometimes there's a really good, and then there's a lyric that's kind of like, though it's all really hard. We're like, nope, not for me. It's not hard at all. And it's kind of difficult to separate, and it actually shouldn't be separated, this lifestyle and this singing and this worship part of our lives, right? And this song worship part of our lives. So as I talk, and as Pastor Hamish said in his first part of this series, was when we talk about this lifestyle that sings worship, we're talking about all of it. So we might be talking about songs. We might also be talking about the heartbeat of our worship as Inspire. So that is in our conversations, in our Take 3 moments. That's the heartbeat of who we are because relationship is so important to us here. Because coming on a Sunday, like Argus said earlier, we don't just come, collect the handshake, and then leave because that's not awesome on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, when we're like, hey, can I celebrate this cool thing with you? Or can I get you to pray with me? That doesn't happen unless we continue to foster our relationships. So even that's a part of our worship. So this series is focusing on our heartbeat at Inspire. It's focusing on some of the reasons we choose certain things in our services, like Take 3, like song selections. But I want us to think about it in this way that, sometimes we're here and we're like, great, a life that sings worship. Like, I don't sing at all. Like, you don't want to hear me sing. And this doesn't have anything to do with that, though it also has everything to do with that. Okay? Did I confuse us sufficiently? Cool. This morning, the creative team arrived at 8. What time does hospitality arrive? 9:30. Kids? They're all with kids. Anybody that serves on kids? 9:30, right? So a bunch of us are coming in early to get this thing called church going on a weekday, right? Or on a weekend, rather. And when we think of that, that's a part of our worship, right? We're like, hey, we want to show up and create an environment that people can step in and meet Jesus. And so my first thing I want to talk about is how worship is collective. Worship doesn't happen without all of us stepping into it. right? So when we come to worship on a Sunday, and the Sunday heartbeat of Inspire is we do it together. We live life together. It's somewhere in one of these. Oh, we don't even have them anymore. So when I say that, if this is your first time, you're like, what is she looking for? We used to have these big words that were cut out on the side. Does anybody else notice that they've probably been missing for ages? Okay, so we don't have them here in our church anymore. Probably for literally months. Super observant worshiper. But there's one that says transforming lives together and better together, right? So we do this thing together. And when we think of these serving teams coming together to worship and to bring our gifts, that is the most beautiful form of worship. So that applies to every single one of us. We can come together and engage in a conversation out in the foyer before service. Or in very typical Inspire fashion, a lot of us tend to arrive just on time or just a few minutes late. And I'm literally not saying that to anybody. Anybody who's been here for a little while knows that though I am one of the worship leaders here, I tend to arrive to worship painstakingly late often, and I'm definitely talking about it in the car like, I really wish we were there. I really want to be there on time or early, because I love stepping into worship songs. But we tend to arrive a little bit late. Those of us who are here serving are already creating that environment for us to even step in late and just go, okay, I'm here to worship. Because there's been prayer going all around these seats, prayer going all around the fruit, prayer going around the kids and what they're going to receive outside. And so this is something that happens together, right? And in Corinthians, it talks about all parts of the body belonging, right? So everyone's gifts, everyone's talents belong here and belong now. This isn't a whole message around serving, but I really want to encourage you that if you do call Inspire home, serve on any team. Because not only is it that collective environment that we create, but when we work alongside of each other and when we serve alongside of each other, we grow so much. We grow in ourselves. We grow in who God called us to be. Zenis and I'm going to share a little bit of our conversation. We're just having a conversation. He said, Corey, thank you so much. I love worshiping with you. And I said, hey, even though, spoiler alert. I said, even though we both don't love one of those songs we sang, it was awesome to see you really worshiping to it. And he goes, of course, but I learned that because you have to step in to every single moment, right? And we grew in our relationship because of moments like that. And I guess I'll probably share a little bit of that story in a little bit. But we're all here with our different gifts and talents. And I really want to encourage you, if you're not yet serving, and if you do call Inspire home, or if you have another home church or you're passing through, I really encourage you to go and become a part of a team. It's what's going to grow you in your relationship with God in some really, really cool ways, just from working alongside of other people. So I really want to encourage you to do that. Now, when it comes to songs, as Pastor Hamish was saying when he kicked it off, he was saying this collective, worship is as collective. He said when we sing a song, we sing with the same pauses, we sing the same lyrics all together, we probably pause at the same time. We might go up or not, choose not to go up in a certain lyric that might go somewhere. But in that act of singing a song, when we take breaths at the same time, when we sing the same lyrics or speak the same lyrics, there's unity. That is a collective moment where we're lifting up God together and sharing these words together. That unifies us so much as a church. So that's why it's so important to think about and talk about who we are. So we know what are we becoming united with? Jesus, period. All right, full stop, the end. Jesus, and also this super positive heartbeat that we have and that we choose in Inspire. And Pastor Hamish was talking a little bit about, you can tell I missed church, and I had to re-listen to the message. I was traveling, and I had to re-listen to the message, so I know everything. I'm like, Pastor Hamish was saying, and you're like, I was here, I don't remember that. Yeah, so one of the things he was talking about was styles and preferences. And he said, while a style may be here, like a country style, Heath, who used to be one of our worship leaders, if you don't know him, Heath loved country music. And I'm not such a fan, not going to lie. Definitely not bumping country music ever. And when some of my favorite artists do like mashups with country artists, I'm like, no, don't go there. But Heath loved country. And worshiping to certain songs with him, he would like just put a country twang on it. That was awesome. I'm sure some of you noticed. And I literally fell in love with it because he loved it so much. And it was a collective moment for me to put down my preference, my style, and go, oh my gosh, let's worship this awesome Jesus together. Even if it sounds a little bit like that, or I don't know, I can't even do it. See, I can't even do it. I'm like, I'll have to think of a lyric later. I'll hit you with it somehow. Take 3 next week. We're going to hear it. But we put our preferences aside, right? And when we think of worship as a collective, sometimes we don't. Sometimes, and I every single time I'm traveling, I like to visit a church in the country that I'm in. I'm like, I find it so powerful. I'm like, what is God doing in this country? What's happening here? So every single time I'll visit a church. And when I'm there, obviously, there's worship. And you can easily step into a church, especially if it's not your home church, and be like, cool. I'm just going to sit here until the pastor does his thing. Like, that drummer is going wild, or this is like Hamish's style of metal. Like, this is like totally not my thing. So I'm just going to chill and wait until the message starts. But I choose not to do that every single time. Because it's not, even if it's not my church, it's not about my style preference. It's about me stepping in and being like, here I am, God. I want to hear from you. I want to speak with you. I want to encounter you. And I want to engage in this moment, in this collective, in whatever church that is. So, our styles come and go as a church. They come and go, and we can never be defined by them. But also, our songs. You might notice that there's never really traditional songs. Because when we think of worship as a collective, if somebody walks in here and they've never heard about this guy Jesus, and we're talking about being sanctified by the blood, they're like, okay. Like, one of my favorite songs right now, it's called Honey in the Rock. And it's like, there's honey in the rock. I'm still like fact checking it with our creative team, being like, is this too traditional? Is this too much Christian words? It's like, everywhere I go, na na na. I can't remember any of the other words right this second, but Honey in the Rock. I'm like, would anybody who's never read scripture or never encountered Jesus, would they be like, what are they on about? Singing this like, there's honey in the rock no matter where I go. And if you're here today and you're not Christian, you're also probably like, what is she on about? Like, what is this honey in a rock? And it's to me so strong and so personal in my season, because it's like God will always provide. He's always there. However, I'm not necessarily singing it in church, because worship as a collective, anyone who comes in these doors should feel like they understand, like they can connect, like they can be a part of God's heartbeat. And so that's something that we're really intentional about here in Inspire. One of my very, very, very good friends is this awesome lady who's super good at playing the keyboard. And she tends to do a lot of worship. Like, she worships on her own for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. And I'm like, whoa, good on you. You are awesome. I will be honest, I don't. When I'm not at church, I actually usually am not really even listening to music. I love quiet, which might come as a shock because I'm always talking and really crazy, but I actually really love quiet. So I don't have anything playing when I'm like doing the dishes. I'm like, silence. Although now it sounds a lot like jackhammers and construction next door. It's like, okay, here's a moment to myself. However, this woman that I love, she was like, she would always be playing and she'd be like, oh, just my God, my moments with my God in my worship. And it got me thinking, like being a mother now, a lot of people, when they talk about Costella, they'll be like, oh, how's my girl doing? And it used to bother me so much, because I'd be like, did you give birth to her? Like, what do you mean, your girl? Like, but I don't remember you being any part of this. Like, how's my girl? Give me my girl. Can I hold my girl? I'm like, what are you on? And then I realized it's just actually the way we communicate when we're close to something. It's like, how's my girl? Like, I love this girl, even though she's not mine, so much. How is she? Can I hold my girl? So I really had to shift my perspective and realize it's just this closeness. Same thing when I hear people say, my God, my Bible. It's referring to their closeness with their relationship. However, where does that closeness, additionally, where does that closeness and relationship fit within this worship as a collective? When we come here together, do we put that my personal moment as the only thing we want to encounter, or do we realize that we're worshiping alongside of other people who also have situations and also want to see breakthrough and also want to celebrate things? And so when I think of certain songs, like we were talking about earlier, certain lyrics that might not apply to me when I'm singing them, no matter this church or if I'm visiting a church, I think of the fact that I might not be singing it to God and worshiping it for me right now, but I'm worshiping it for the person next to me. One of the lyrics we sang this morning, it said, I might be getting it a little bit wrong, but it said, even in the pain of the unresolved, I'll worship you. And I'll be honest, I try not to have, in this season of my life, I try not to have too much unresolved between me and God. I'm like, God, I get your plans. And this, I understand this bears the line of toxic positivity. We talk about that sometimes. But even through really challenging times, I'm like, all right, I'm trusting you. I'm trusting you. So right now, I don't have anything unresolved with you. But as I'm worshiping those lyrics, I'm not like, skip, not me. I'm like, even in the pain of the unresolved, somebody here right now is having some unresolved pain that you're bringing to God in these moments that we're singing. And so I focus on those words as a way to really be a part of worship as a collective, as a family, right here, all together. And in Hebrews 10, it talks about, it says, let us hold unswervingly to the hope we professed. For he who promised is faithful. And let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together. There you go. You're amazing, Reuben. As some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching. I think of this holding unswervingly and meeting together. This is our moment. This is what we call church. This is what we call every single Sunday. When we still choose to get up and come together, this is us holding unswervingly to his promises because he's faithful. So when we think of it in the context of worship, how do we lift that up together with and for each other? Unswervingly. That means there's a choice, right? We have to hold and choose. And a second part of what I would love to refer to our worship as is worship is a choice. We talk about worship being something that we need to surrender in, worship that's something that transcends our moment. And so we come alongside of each other in this collective, and we think of worship and choosing to step into that moment. We have the opportunity to get away from whatever it is we carry, right? And that's why I'm super frustrated every time that I'm late on a Sunday. I'm like, I'm missing one or two of these songs. That is my chance to transcend, my chance to already step out of whatever I've got going on, and my chance to step alongside of people and celebrate and mourn and dance in this dance of life. And thinking of this choice, Pastor Hamish had this awesome message when we first started as a church. And he was talking about, what is your anthem? Has anybody heard him talk about your anthem? Do you know what I might be referring to? Like, all right, so every good movie has like an anthem. Like we're rewatching Money Heist, not church recommended, but we're rewatching Money Heist, and it's just so fun because we're hearing the Casa del Papel, we're hearing the theme song going in, and it just puts us in this great yes, let's do this, and we're going to learn a little bit of Spanish while we do it. Let's enjoy this moment. But it's almost like the anthem of the show, right? And so Pastor Hamish was talking about, what is your anthem when you wake up? What do you choose to put on? What do you choose to listen to or to worship to with your life? And I chose this song. I'm almost like, can you guess? I don't know, throw out one song at least. One song you might think that is my anthem. Knowing me, even for just a second, Alex, let's see that. A country song, ding, 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 we have a winner. Yeah, no, thank you. It's a song, Walking on Sunshine. Do you know that song? I'm walking on sunshine, whoa. So that's been hands down, when I heard that message, I was like, what would I want to define my life as? I'm like, walking on sunshine. That could be an annoying song for some of you. I'm sorry if it is. But it was my alarm on my phone. When I'd wake up, I would hear this song, and I'd be like, yeah, there was another season of my life where my anthem was Girl on Fire. Like, this girl is on fire. And I'm like, yes, I'm on fire for you, Jesus. And I'm waking up right now, it's the Apple, ding, ding, to the really, really great anthem, must admit. But this song, this Walking on Sunshine, it's something that I chose to put on every single day. And there was actually a really cool moment of worship, so I'm going to kind of intertwine some of my own worship stories, worship as song and worship as life, within this. And one of those moments was when I was in New Zealand, and I was not a singer ever in my life. Tom said last week that one of his favorite things about being an Inspire was it's like a rock concert every Sunday. Loved that. I was never ready to rock before church started. I was one of the first members of Inspire, and my very first service of singing, I was literally like this. Jesus, like microphone could not get further away from me, and hand in back pocket. I felt so shy, so awkward, and so not worthy, right? Not ready. And so I was used to a very organic, very smaller concept of worship as song. And when I was in New Zealand, I was attending a conference, and I was at this conference, and they're like, "Hey, do you want to sing with us?" And I was like, there's a lot of people. There's like a couple hundred people here. Like, I'll do backing. Yeah, I'll sing, but like, I don't want to lead anything. I'll just do one of the other songs. They didn't tell me, but they just like turned my my microphone up. So I was literally leading the song, but I didn't know I was leading the song. So I was like all in my moment. And afterwards, there was this really prophetic woman that was at this conference, and everyone like really wanted her to like prophesy over them and speak these words. Prophecy, by the way, in case you're not familiar, is just speaking something that you see into existence and is meant to encourage us and lift us up. So this woman's like, "Oh, I'm here, and I've got a word for someone," and like everyone in New Zealand's leaned forward and waiting. She's like, "That girl that was standing right here," and I firstly felt horrible because I was like, "I'm a visitor, don't call on me." Everyone else is like, "No." And then she's like, "This might not make sense, but I feel like God is saying he's smiling over you. Like, I just keep hearing that song. Sounds weird, but I'm walking on sunshine. I feel like God's just saying that over you in this moment." And I was like, "Thanks." Like, tear rolled down my cheek, and she didn't know that that was what I was choosing to put on. And in that season, it was a bit harder for me to choose, to know that I can still walk in that sunshine. So it was hearing directly from God. And that was a choice, right? The anthem is a choice. So I want to encourage you to think of, what would your anthem be? Somebody else once asked me, what would your life motto be? We were doing like a lot of like goal setting and life planning. And they're like, what would your life motto be? And I was like, I think, like your guiding value. I was like, I think I never want to meet someone and not have them feel better after I'm with them. And you know, I work like the rest of us, and I work with a team, and I sometimes have to counsel some of those team members and correct behavior and do performance reviews and tell people when whatever they're doing doesn't line up with my company's values and whether or not this is the right job for them. How you have that conversation and be like, feel lifted up. Great, thanks. But impressing into God and choosing to say, I'm going to walk into this conversation with this person, and I know it's going to be hard, and they frustrate the heck out of me, but I'm going to choose my mantra of not having them feel elevated from this moment. And I've had people literally resign and be like, "You're so right. And now I've started this other job, and it was everything." And I'm like, "God, give me the words. What can I say? Because this clearly isn't lining up with this person. Otherwise, they'd be doing their best work. They would be so excited to be here, and they would be not turning up 20 minutes late every day if this is what they wanted, right? And if this is what you wanted for them." And so I've had some amazing things, but it all comes out back from that choice, that anthem, that motto. So I choose it before I'm going into this moment. What can this look like? And so, again, not necessarily ignoring that bad things happen. Toxic positivity can be dangerous. And somebody once said, a couple of weeks ago, we were leading worship, and we started without any instruments. And I was like, all right, sure. And I started the song, and I could not find the melody at all. And I was like, what is this? And Zenis was on guitar, and I literally went to Zenis. Does anybody remember? Was anybody here for that? I literally had to stop the first song of worship. I was like, I can't, I'm sorry, this isn't. I was like, Zenis, can I hear your key? And he's like, I can't, we need to start over. So I turned around and said, everybody, let's call it what it is. This is wrong. We all want to step into worship together in a really authentic way. So let's just start over. And so they started playing. I was like, that's the key. There we are. Okay. And then we stepped right in, and I was just straight in. Like, here we are, God, let's do this. I was still laughing at myself, but I was choosing to embrace this moment of worship. And a lot of people were too. And somebody actually wrote me afterwards, and they're like, thank you so much for pausing in that moment. I was like, yeah, it would have been a train wreck, hey? And they were like, no, thank you, because it made me realize that it's not all toxic positivity. It's not all I was like, this is trash. Let's start over. We are here to worship God. Let's do this together. And they're like, it made me realize that we can be broken and seen and still show up and still choose and still encounter God. And I'm going to share a few stories to not make you feel bad in my seasons, but one of the songs we sang today was Waymaker. Waymaker, who loves Waymaker? Like everyone in the world loves Waymaker. It's so good. And because it's so true. It's our God. We're singing about our God who will make a way. No matter what way you need made, he is still making that way. Argus said during his MC, he's like, God, even when I'm sleeping, you're making a way for me. How cool is that? And I remember the first time that song really was like, oh, like God, like you need to make a way. And it was coming out of Circuit Breaker, and we were allowed to meet here in groups of like 5 and televised worship, and it was like a weird time. And I was sitting here, and I realized that I was actually, I didn't realize at first, because I went into Circuit Breaker, newly married, super loving life, having the best time ever. And afterwards, I got this really crazy anxiety, as many people have had from Circuit Breaker and not being around people. And I had such bad anxiety that I really felt depressed. And I was here, and we were singing Waymaker, and I remember in that moment being like, I just want to sit here and cry. And I actually don't want to be here right now. I'd rather be in my living room because it's safe there. And I don't know about this. And I remember that specific moment saying, Corey, you're going to choose to declare that he's your Waymaker. You're going to believe that don't sit here as a passenger and observe. And because, again, you couldn't even sing in church. So it was one person playing it on a piano, and that was it. And I was like, it's not even worship like I'm used to. I just want to be able to either say it or don't say it. Like, what are we doing here? And I had the most beautiful encounter with God on my own, telling him, I know you're going to make a way. And then week after week after week, he made a way. And I felt seen, right? I remember one of the people at church, her name was Amber. She's back in Sydney now. And I was like, Amber, like, it's hard because I'm no longer the walking on sunshine girl. I feel like I can't get back there. Like, how do I get back to that version of me? And she's like, you're not supposed to be that version of you. You're supposed to be carrying the scars, and you're supposed to be carrying the pain, and you're supposed to be the new version of you. It's okay to carry that into this season. And when I think of Waymaker and our God and the power that he is, he wants us, like we said, to surrender and be refined by fire, but not just sit in the fire and look at our scars and be like, this scars, oh my gosh, because we're just going to keep getting burned. There's beauty when we walk out the other side and we're like, there's scars, and this is the new me. This is the God who's still going to make a way. This is the God who wants to use me. He sees me. He knows my heart, and he's going to do awesome things through that. And if we sit too long looking at the flames, be like, this is just really hard, it's just really hard, it's just really hard, it's really difficult to see the beauty in the scars. And so it's not the toxic positivity, but it's not being defined by the flames. It's acknowledging them and walking through them. Another time that song spoke beautifully to me in another season was, how did I want to share this? Okay, right before we got pregnant with Costella, the month beforehand, we were pregnant and we had a miscarriage. And this was our second miscarriage as a couple, me and Rob. And I was actually told when I was younger that I wouldn't be able to have children. And I was like 16, and I cried, and the gynecologist looked at me, and she's like, why are you so sad? You want to be a mom? And I'm like, eventually, like maybe not right now, but eventually. My mom's like, I'll carry your baby for you. I'm like, no offense, you're going to be really old. That's gross. And I'm like, we had this moment, and in that same, maybe it was the same conference, it was another conference in New Zealand. Somebody was talking to me, and they're like, hey, this is really awkward, but like, and he was a guy with like 6 daughters, and he's like, you got problems going on, but God wants you to know you're healed. And I was like, awesome, thanks. And I cried, and I really believed it. So when we had these moments, these miscarriages, I remember thinking like, wow. And people say that you can either focus on that moment and really be defined by that. And again, everyone's situation is different. So I do not, I understand some people are still struggling in seasons like this, right? But for me, the biggest blessing of that season was realizing I can get pregnant. So I can and I will eventually have a child, but right now it's not. And so the next month after our second one, we got pregnant again. And it was really funny because when I was in that season, we went home, and we were home for a whole month, and we didn't know. And my brother pulled Rob, my husband, aside and was like, hey, think you need to talk to my sister, because like she told me about what happened with you guys, and like I think she's just being like really over the top positive. Like, has she processed any of this? Like, is she okay? Because I was like, I really feel like we're gonna get pregnant this month, and he's like, haha, yeah, but also I was like, no, I literally do. I feel like God, like I'm totally okay. I really feel like I'm gonna get pregnant this month, and if we don't, we don't. I love my husband, so we're cool. Like, if not, love being like single young couple, cool. And I said, but I really feel it's gonna happen this month. And so he pulled Rob aside and was like, please talk to her. She's just like toxically positive, and I don't think she acknowledges this. And I was like, no, I get it. I cried a lot. I really was very, very sad, but I trust and I know, and I'm choosing to believe that one day I will, and I really believe it's gonna be this month, but if not, one other day it will be. And the next month we were. And I could have focused and dwelled the whole time on not being, but I was dwelling on he who promises faithful. He who promises faithful, one day he will. And again, I understand that's not everyone's situation, but for me, for us, that has been. And it's been an absolute blessing to be able to focus on the positive. And then finally, when we think of worship as a choice, right, there's so often in our lives, people speak all this great stuff, and we think of worship as a choice, as a lifestyle, and then worship as a choice as words, right? And as the songs that we lift up to God. When people are talking to you, they're like, oh, so Zenas and Alex, right? You're getting married next week, T-minus 7 days. Yes, right? So in 7 days, they're going to make the most incredible part of their journey. They're going to get married. It's one of the most incredible parts. And I remember when I was getting married. I remember when I was pregnant. I remember now that I'm a mom. So many times people like to be like, oh my gosh, that's so great. There's no more going out for you. Like getting pregnant. Oh, no more. Say goodbye to sleep. Never gonna sleep again. And I'm like, this is like, aren't people supposed, like, isn't this supposed to be a good thing? People like, congratulations. Oh, your hair is gonna fall out when you're done being pregnant. I'm like, oh, thank you. That's so encouraging. Like, I feel so excited by that. And it's all in love when people are like, hey, this is my experience. It's really hard. Like we had one couple that were like, you're getting married and you're going into circuit breaker. Oh my gosh, our marriage almost fell apart when we started living together. We're going to be praying for you. And I was like, thank you. Thank you so much. And we had the best time ever because we're like, no obligations to anyone except for on that little box, that darn computer that sucked the life out of me. But like, it was like, besides that moment, we got no commute. We got to hang out all the time. We had the most incredible foundations. And had we chosen, and we had tough times too, right? We had moments where we're learning how to communicate more effectively and learning what each other's preferences and styles and all the things, the conversations that we were privileged to have all the time for conversations, but all the conversations that we had to be refined and to be stronger coming out of it. Had we chosen to focus on, man, they had a really hard time when they first, would have been really hard. We'd be like, see, this is the moment they're talking about. This is hard. I'm out here, like, the backs turned to each other. No, we continually chose, and I'm so excited for you. Again, your faces are like, please tell me it's awesome. It's awesome. And it's an incredible privilege to be together, right? And people talk about, say goodbye to sleep. I was celebrating this morning when I was like thinking about this message. It was 4 a.m. A lot of us are like, see, you don't sleep. No, she had been sleeping for 7.5 hours already. I just went to bed super late. So I was like, oh, this is awesome. So when people are like, oh, the babies never sleep, it's really hard. Not true. If anyone's ever having a child, not true. Not true. So just going to say that. But the choice part. So we have to be careful choosing which words, which voices we want to listen to. Right? And oftentimes it's well-meaning. I was FaceTiming my grandmother last night, and she was like, oh my gosh, hold the baby's head. And I guess grandmothers do. She's like, her head is wobbling. She's going to break. And I was like, no, Mama. That's grandmother in Hungarian. I said, she's okay. It's okay. She's not. But it still did something to my heart. I'm not going to lie. Like, as soon as I hung up, I was like, wait, but like, she is okay. Like, I've had her sitting in that chair for ages, and she's like super strong. And because she's like sitting in one of those little like exploring tables, and she's like not, okay, so she's almost 3 months. Judge me not. She's a very strong 3-month-old, but she's like playing at this table with her head up and like kind of bobbling it around, like, oh my gosh. And so as soon as she was like that, oh, and she goes, parents these days, we held on to you for as long as we could. I said, yeah, but we have science now. Like, everything that I researched until now tells me that this moment's okay. And then I hung up the phone, and I had to choose to put her words aside because they still met my heart somewhere where I was like, oh, okay. Oh my goodness. Let me just research just another few minutes. I knew what I was doing was right, but so we have to choose wisely what we allow to be spoken over us, what we speak out for ourselves. So oftentimes when we're talking at Inspire of the heartbeat of our worship, we don't often sing worship songs that bring us down. Similar to my life mantra, at Inspire, we believe that we will always want to be walking out of this place elevated. No matter what we're walking in with, we want to walk out elevated. So even when we're super challenged and convicted by a message, we want to walk out elevated and brought to life. In Proverbs 16, 21 through 24, it says, the wise in heart are called discerning, and gracious words promote instruction. Prudence is a fountain of life to the prudent, but folly brings punishment to fools. The hearts of the wise make their mouths prudent, and their lips promote instruction. Gracious words are a honeycomb, sweet to the soul and healing to the bones. Prudent, by the way, means careful, like carefully choosing your words. So when you're careful, and as an extrovert, I really struggle to, I do the foot and mouth thing often where I say too many things, and I'm like, why did I say that? That was not, I shouldn't have said that. But whenever, and I'm learning how to hold back my words and how to think before I speak and how to not externally process everything. And when I do, I can see how much more powerful it is because I can choose to see someone's situation. I can choose to speak the right words and not all of the words for their situation so that they doesn't get lost in everything else. And that scripture just reminds me of when we do choose our songs, right? It's like honeycomb. It heals. It said that gracious words are a honeycomb, sweet to the soul and healing to the bones. Literally physically healing. And it brings me on to our last part of worship being physical. When we talk about transcending our experience or speaking positivity over ourselves, there's a physiological reaction inside of us. Has anybody heard of the mind-body connection? I know you have. Thank you. Rob's like, yes. Is this a rhetorical question? So the mind-body connection. There's a bunch of science. It's been around for decades. People have been talking about how there is connection between our minds and our thoughts and our body. So our neural pathways can literally heal our bodies. So when we talk about words being honeycomb and healing to the bones, they literally can heal us. So a man thinks he becomes, Scripture says. And anybody who practices mindfulness knows that when you're being mindful and when you're breathing, for example, and you're like, God, your power is inside of me right now. That you feel, when you choose to believe that, you feel God's power inside of you. You feel his healing inside of you. And there was a study that was just recently done, the results were released in April, around this mind-body connection. And they were testing different parts of the brain and seeing how this part, when it's activated, your toe twitches, and this part, the physiological, the movement parts of the brain. And they discovered, unknowingly, other parts of movement in the brain when they were doing the imaging. And these parts were the parts that took care of planning, critical thinking, and other minor bodily functions like your heart rate or your heartbeat. And it went to prove that as you practice mindfulness, it's not like a laggard effect that your heart rate will go down. Okay, I'm going to breathe slow breaths for 5 minutes, and eventually my parasympathetic nervous system is going to be activated, and then I'm going to be calm. It's literally, I breathe thinking that I need to be calm, and it has a physiological reaction inside my brain and immediately fires off a response in my neural pathways to be calm. And so when there's people and there's our psychologists are talking about how to process anxiety, what we choose and what we consume has a physiological response. So when we step into worship as a physical moment and we focus on what we're singing, we focus on the words, we can literally melt in his presence. When we focus on that word I said earlier, the lyric, in all the pain of the unresolved, when we focus on really singing that word, in all the pain of the unresolved, I will worship you. I will worship you. Maybe it's for us. Maybe it's for the person next to us. When we truly sing the lyric, process the lyric, it has a physiological response. there are some gratitude studies, tons of gratitude studies as well, and talking about how when you actually experiment and you intentionally are choosing things to be grateful for every day, it can improve your mood, it can improve your health, you have a longer lifespan. There was one where there was a New York Times article last month, and there was a woman whose husband had passed away, father had passed away. She sold her home of 26 years, moved home, was with her mom, just got diagnosed with cancer, and she's like, this is horrible. Literally the worst year of my entire life. I don't even know. She practiced gratitude every day, but not just saying, this is what I'm grateful for. She wrote it down. And so they talk about gratitude expressed in words, writing it down specifically. So she started putting it into a jar every single day, and her mood elevated extremely because she was no longer just focusing on the situation or no longer saying, okay, I'm grateful for this. She was so intentional to write it down so that she can also look back on it. When we think of that as worship, when we express gratitude with words and real specificity, we can experience such elevated presence of God because we're standing in it, right? Last week, Pastor Hamish was like sitting on the stage at some point, and he was like, everyone can stand. And he was inviting us to stand and engage in this moment at the end of service. And he often does that. He's at the end of every service, basically, he's like, all right, let's stand and let's pray. And at the end of each service, we have the opportunity to stand and be intentional, to be like, okay, wait a second, God, here I am. And some of you might, similar to me, be in this moment of service where like it's 11:44. We tend to drift at this point. I'm thinking like, all right, am I working after this? Do I have time to grab lunch? Now it's like, what are we going to do with the baby? Like, so your mind starts to go to all of those things at this point, like 11:44. So if you haven't gone there already, I'm sorry to put you there. And if you went there already, I got a massive nod from Mike. Mike's like, yup, totally there. I know exactly what's happening. I already ordered the grab. Yeah, that's cool. But this tends to be the moment when that happens. So whenever Pastor Hamish says, all right, I'm going to invite everyone to stand, that physical action is when I choose. It's like a snap thing in my brain where I go, oh my gosh, wait, you're here. You're still in church. This is a moment. I did not come here to plan my groceries. I came here to encounter God. So if I came here to encounter God, when I'm invited to stand, I'm going to choose to stand and be fully in this moment, knowing that he who promises faithful, knowing that he is the way maker and he's got something that he wants to do for me and for every other person here right now. So I'm going to choose to be present. I'm not going to look at my phone because that's distracting. Maybe the person behind me is about to have this epic moment with God, but then I pull out my phone and they're like, oh yeah, maybe I should think about my lunch too. And then they start to drift because I'm impeding that moment. They just got distracted by me. And so when I think of those moments, like when Pastor Hamish says, can you stand and be present in this moment? That's the invitation we have every single time we come on a Sunday and every single time we step in to worship as a part of the service. So I'm going to talk about the worship as a part of the songs. The physiological response, right? Lifting hands, opening our hearts. Sometimes I'll say, can we all put our hands over our hearts? And I know I'm not expecting everyone to become Pentecostal and be like, yeah, worship you, like I worship. But I choose to worship that way because the physiological response is having inside of my body. And I feel it's important to share that with you as one of the people that leads worship here and as somebody who's coming to Inspire and as a theme on worship, to know that the reason I do that is because of the physiological response, the connectedness I'm going to feel to Jesus afterwards. And Hamish invited us in the first message of this series to engage with that. He said, if you come late, I want to encourage you, don't come late. If you intentionally skip the beginning, because some people do, they're like, I hate worship, it's so awkward. Actually, no, what they hate is take 3. So then they're like, can I come after take 3? And again, this is such a part of who we are at Inspire, right? And so it's like, yeah, figure out something else, right? Like go to the bathroom during take 3. But you're invited into this moment to receive everything. And if you're not a singer, you don't think it's a rock band, and you don't think it's super fun, that's okay. But this is still a moment that you'll never, ever get back. So we can choose to be fully invested. We can choose physiologically to step in, to read the lyrics, to internalize, to process, what am I singing? I know that there's a God that's powerful, and I know he's going to work in this moment. So I'm going to invite the creative team back up. And we might as well sing Waymaker on our way out. Because every single one of us has something that we need to be making a way for. If we don't have it for us, It's for someone we know. If you don't actually know somebody that needs a way made for them, look around. Do it for Zenis. He's getting married next week. Do it, Zenis and Alex. Make a way for them, right? Watch how God does incredibly and unimaginably more than they could ever think, dream, imagine. So in this moment, I'm going to invite you all to stand. And as you do, when you're ready, as Pastor Hamish said last week, when you're ready, stand. Don't stand because, okay, here we're standing. Okay. You can still stretch, still do whatever you need to do. But this is a moment that you get to choose to engage in this collective moment of worship. Because he who promised is faithful, and he's going to do incredible things. So as we want this worship moment to transform us spiritually, physically, emotionally, and as a collective, I'm going to pray. And I'm going to ask that you can make whatever commitment it is for you in your own space, in your own place, to be engaged in this moment. Maybe it is putting your hand over your heart. Maybe it's putting your hands out in front of you. And whenever worship leaders are like, everybody lift your hands, raise your hands, I do it. I'm not going to lie, I do it, but I do it reluctantly. I'm like, tell me to raise my hands. What is this thing? But I want you to make some sort of physical gesture. Maybe you're the only one that experiences it, you're the only one that sees it, but some sort of physical move that's just for you and just for God. So I'm going to choose to put my hand over my heart. And you can feel free to do the same if you like, but I'm going to pray for all of us as we choose a gesture to be present and closer. And again, if you've never been to church before, I invite you to choose to experience all that it has to offer in this moment, because there's something else here that you just don't even know that's here. So Jesus, with my hand over my heart, thank you that you are so much greater than I can ever imagine. Thank you that your Holy Spirit is here in every single breath that we take. Thank you that with the next breath, the next inhale that we take in, we inhale freedom. We exhale expectation. We put those expectations down because you're so magnificent that our expectations or the expectations others have for us pale in comparison to what you want to do in and through us. So, Father, I thank you for healing. I thank you for healing of hearts, of minds, of bodies. Thank you that every single prayer in this place, every single desire of our hearts, you see, you know, and you love, and you call us beautiful. That over every one of us, you're singing this moment of, this is my son, my daughter, my person in whom I'm well pleased. There's nothing they can do. There's nothing they can say to change my love for them. So, Father, I thank you for helping us to experience that love in such tangible ways that encourage us, and that the only result is to worship you with all of our lives, with all of our minds, with all of our bodies. The only solution is to worship you and to praise who you are. So we thank you for the opportunity. We rest in that as we sing over ourselves and praise your name. In Jesus' name.